Senator Chuck Schumer of New York, who leads the Democrats in the Senate, said that with every day that the government is shut down, it just gets better for them. Now they try to once again gaslight you and blame it on the Republicans when the Republicans are pushing measures to open the government back up. Welcome back to Jock's Corner, where truth and reality have a seat at the table. Now, as you know, I'm pretty keyed into what's happening in D.C. and in my state, Kentucky. And when I say that I am alarmed, it's not because I'm being hyperbolic, but because I've seen and heard things that most are not aware of or in a position to know. And I don't do this for my health, obviously, and I derive no revenue from my website, books, or this podcast. Over the last 4 years, I've spent nearly $300,000 on ringing the alarm bells, and I do so now even with Trump in office. Many think erroneously that now that Trump is in office, that everything will be all right. No, it won't. Trump is simply delaying the execution of this country and your freedoms. We simply don't have enough patriots and people like you to fight the fight. And even worse is that when we do get recruits, they are rarely fit because they really don't know how bad it is, and they have not had to exercise a boldness and a courage in the face of incredible odds to know how to fight and what it will take. Okay, with that intro and disclosure, let's start. There is nothing more dangerous than a wounded bear. I think you all should know that. In our current political climate, that would be the Democrat left. They are thrashing around and becoming more profane, violent, and irrational. You must step into the breach. Individually, you must start speaking the truth and calling out all the lies the left tells you. You must do this as it is human nature to believe the lie over the truth. If you cannot do that because you are afraid or will be defriended, then you're part of the problem. Let me be very clear. Most don't follow current events, but if you were a student of it, as I am along with others in the political sciences, you would know we are on the cusp of a civil war. Many think it impossible, but don't fool yourselves as you have been over the last 20 years. Between your toxic tolerations and denials, we are in the peril we are. The Democrat left is always talking about civil war. They are much like the radical Muslims that tell you that they're going to kill you. You ignore them, and then they kill you. So when the left talks of civil war, you should take them seriously and take them at their word, because I know what they're up to. I understand their chess move on the chessboard. And to them, you are like children when it comes to this game. You are so easily manipulated. The violence on the left, along with their allies in government like Jeffries, Schumer, AOC, Pritzker, Newsom, Schiff, and a slew of others who are stoking the flames of civil unrest, are intentionally forcing regular Americans into a corner where basically you will have no choice but to fight. Here is the most recent example. We are in a Democrat-led government shutdown. Senator Chuck Schumer said on national TV that the longer this goes, the better it is for Democrats. Now, what you think about that? Our military doesn't get paid, but they have to work without a paycheck, as well as our air traffic controllers. You feel good about flying now? And thousands of others. I will say it once again. The Democrat left cares nothing about you. The only thing they care about is their power. Think on this. While Trump is bringing peace to nations all around the world and has done something historic over the last 50 years in the Middle East, the Democrat left is shutting down our government here at home for what? Their own gain. I don't know how many times I have to tell this and say this to people, that there's nothing good in the Democrat left. They have been totally taken over by these anarchists. Now, I want you to think on this for a minute. While Trump is bringing peace to nations all around the world, the Democrat left is shutting down our government here at home for their own gain. And what is it that they are shutting the government down for? They want money for circumcision in Africa, transgender and LGBTQ, well, let's just say it, queer promotion in South America, and medical care for illegal aliens where they cut in line in front of Americans. Folks, the Democrat left is so evil, I curse them with Psalms 109. There are many great reasons basically to go to heaven, and one of them, at least for me, is so I won't have to spend an eternity in hell with the Democrats, because that's exactly where they're going. If you know the good book as you should, you know the destiny of the godless and the God-hating left. The Democrat platform represents everything that God hates, and that is without debate. Let's make no mistake about it. It is your tolerance over these years and all these, at least the last 20 years, that has brought us to this point because you were led to believe that tolerance was a virtue. Tolerance of evil is never and never has been a virtue. This reminds me of Barry Goldwater's most famous quote of extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice, and moderation in the pursuit of justice is no virtue. Yes, Trump is making marvelous headways in dismantling the deep state and the corruption in the courts and various agencies, but the left is becoming more and more shrill. From Portland to Chicago to New York, these communist bastions are digging in spite of the collapse of law and order and a climbing murder rate in those areas. Listen to their terroristic rhetoric in the face of Trump's attempt to bring order and peace to the streets of these cities. It reveals the panic of those on the left upon losing to Trump after coming so close as they did to permanent authoritarian control in this country. You need to pray to God in thanksgiving for how He has spared you and this nation. And you didn't deserve it, but He has spared us. But it won't last long if you keep tolerating the evil left, whether it is in your family or your friends or your neighbors, or the things that you support with your purchases or how you vote. Folks, I'm not asking you to get in a fight with anyone, but it is very powerful when you let them know of your disapproval. As my father once famously said all the time, faint heart never won fair lady. You Christians are called to evangelize, and it is a target-rich environment for you, so there's no excuse not to be out there. And let me remind you, there is a consequence to how you live your life, and particularly your omissions. The things you fail to do, that is. My friends, you have heard this 1,000 times. There's nothing new under the sun. And indeed, there isn't. History does repeat itself. And listen to me closely. The Confederacy never died. It only rebranded itself. Likewise, the Nazis never died. They too rebranded themselves. How so, you say? Well, first, you must remember they, the Confederates, and let's look at this word, Confederates, con meaning against federate or federalism, they defederalized, or another name for it today is called nullification. They nullified the Union and seceded from the Union. Today, they have done the same thing, but they call it sanctuary, as in sanctuary cities and states. Folks, this is treason, and there needs to be a deafening outcry from you and everyone as to the treason. There needs to be treason accusations. These treason accusations, folks, have to be connected to sanctuary, and it must be repeated again and again until people get it. Throughout my podcast, I'm telling you not only the problems that we face, but the things that need to be done. So not only should you confront those around you who are destroying the country and your freedoms, putting you in jeopardy, but you also need to be calling your legislators and being outraged over how they have not outlawed sanctuary cities or states. They've tolerated it. This rises to the level of treason, and there must be consequences. And if your legislators won't take action, then vote them out, and you need to campaign against them. And folks, you will get the greatest reception if you start calling your state representatives, because they are the ones that are the closest to the people. Secondly, let's talk about Nazis and fascism, which is a term recklessly thrown around by the left. It is really no different than communism or any other form of tyranny. Today, they call themselves Antifa and the Save Palestinian protesters. It's all centralized control and no freedom. which is what the left mindset has always been and has not changed. Think about it. There is a new game plan and strategy of the new Nazis, I call them. They are hiding from you. Listen, they hide in plain sight. The technique for them is call everyone else a Nazi to deflect what they really are. Why would you ever believe anything the Democrat left says? If you can't see that, then maybe you're hopelessly ignorant, or maybe as worse as being stupid. Now remember, stupidity has an element of immorality to it because those people have selectively chosen to be ignorant. If you knew your history and were up to date on your current events, you would instantly know and recognize that every one of the proposals, the slander, the lawfare, civil unrest, anti-Semitism of the Democrat left is all characteristic of the Nazis of 80 years ago. How can anyone go to bed at night and sleep soundly knowing their belief system is a fraud and built on lies? How can you go to bed at night and know that you didn't do your part to earn your freedom? This is all a symptom of laziness, cowardice, and of an unpatriotic and ungrateful people. Don't be part of that. Now listen carefully to the Democrat left and their gaslighting. They are a replica of the old Confederacy blended with the Nazi propaganda, and they are telling you who and what they are. Everything the Nazis and the Confederacy did prior to the wars they started is exactly what the Democrat Party is doing and saying today. The governor of Oregon and the mayor of Portland, the headquarters of the domestic terror group Antifa, says all's well, when you can see with your own eyes that the city is burning and people are fleeing. It is not well at all in Portland. Listen carefully to Governor Pritzker of Illinois and Chicago Mayor Johnson, who tell you that all is well as they fight against the National Guard, even though there has been, now get this, there has been 6,200 murders in Chicago in the last 10 years. And there are multiple murders and shootings every week. And they say all is well? Are you really serious that you're going to even listen to these people and believe them? Then we have a communist in Mamdani who's likely to win the mayorship in New York. Yes, Trump is in, but we are in a very deep hole that has been dug over the last 10 to 20 years. Folks, we have allowed the rot to go too far. How much of that is your fault? The left will get in your face and spew their lies, but when was the last time you got in someone else's face to tell them the truth? They're busy telling you lies, and they don't have any problem getting in your face about it. But when was the last time you got into their face to tell them the truth? To you Christians, how many of you are really living your faith? The left is irrational and violent. You cannot have civil conversation with them, as we just saw with Jeffries in the House telling a GOP member to shut his mouth. These people are only a few votes away from control. We have seen how they use their pets in the media to propagandize you. We have seen how they defy law and order when they preach it all the time. We see how they weaponize and have weaponized the judiciary and prosecutors and federal agencies to target you and to shut you up. This is no game. The violence will increase and the left will use it to once again seize control, and this time it will be permanent. They are accusing Trump of authoritarianism, which has been their fever dream for as long as they have existed. Remember this, and remember what I told you in ad nauseum, and have told you in ad nauseum. You know what the left is up to by listening to what they are accusing you of. In 2021, they brought the term insurrection into the public domain because that is who they are and what they want. But they stuck it on Trump. Now they bring in the terms fascism, sanctuary, police state, as National Guards come in to bring down the crime. They are telling you who they are by the carefully crafted terms they use. They are telling you that they are the fascists, the new Confederates. They want insurrection, like you see in Portland and other cities. This doesn't take a PhD to figure out. All you have to do is listen. If you are this listening impaired, I doubt many of you understand any sermon in your church. You are likely falsely assured and will be like those in Matthew 7 where Christ cast them out. I remind you weekly that you must have a plan of action while you are still free to do so. Look what has just happened in the United Kingdom. If you are native to England and you speak against the left or the Muslims who now constitute, get this, a majority of the London population, then you go to jail. This is going to happen here. Go read Orwell's dystopian novel of 1984. It's coming true. And as a teenager, I saw it coming and was astounded as to the blindness, if not stupidity and laziness, of those on my side of the equation. In all my years, I have never seen evil so nakedly displayed as I am in the Democrat left, and they make no pretense about it. If you stand too close to a painting, you can't see what it's about, can you? But as you move away, it comes into focus. And in my life, I've experienced much and studied in depth, as well as having been deeply involved in the political process, to know that we are on a razor's edge, and you better be listening, followed by acting. Remember, you will start getting answers to your prayers once you start putting legs to those prayers. Given the psychotic denial in which so many Americans live, I don't see how we can avoid civil uprising on a mass scale because regular Americans have boxed themselves in and are surrounded by the leftist cabal who will not give up peacefully. There are no patriotic Democrats, and Senator Chuck Schumer of New York is a stark example wherein he shut down the entire U.S. government in order to save his reelection. Now they try to once again gaslight you and blame it on the Republicans when the Republicans are pushing measures to open the government back up. But the Democrats keep blocking the passage. Why? Because there's only 53 Republicans and it takes 60 votes. So that means 7 Democrats have to vote to reopen the government, and they won't do it. The radical left is in total control of the Democrat Party, and they are in a fever pitch to seize control. Remember, stand and fight or live on your knees. The left hates you and will murder you. How many more Charlie Kirks do you need to prove that point? This is not just my surface evaluation because I've done a deep dive on this along with other colleagues of mine, and the diagnosis is dire. Why is this so? Because most Americans don't have the intestinal fortitude to do what is needed and to take the strong measures necessary to purge the country of this threat that we face. Now, enough for that topic. I want to sort of move into some what I call drive-by comments on headlines in the news. And here's one of my quick drive-by remarks, and this one is on Bad Bunny. We've heard about that in the upcoming Super Bowl in January. That entertainer that's supposed to be entertaining millions, if not billions, of people at halftime at the Super Bowl, get this, he was recently seen and spotted at a game in New York where he refused to stand up for the singing of the national anthem and God Bless America. No surprise there. So now the question is, what are you going to do about it? You have the tools and the access to all the information, as do I, particularly with the internet. Make your feelings known. Time to be outraged. Really, it's less about him not standing and more about him even appearing for the halftime show because he's such a profane person. And it just goes to show you that no matter how great an individual's psychosis and contradictions are, there always seems to be an audience for them, doesn't there? And this audience continues to grow, and that should be a concern of all of us. Now, if you're part of that audience, you may have what's called cognitive dissonance. Then for some of you, you wonder, why would this audience who supports that, which contradicts everything they stand for, grow? Well, that's simple. You pay for it. You pay for it every time that you send your children to school because that's what they are being taught. And more of them are becoming that audience who is willing to accept anything and everything. Well, here's another quick thought for you, and it's in relation to the Nobel Peace Prize committee snubbing President Trump after he ended 8 wars and now the peace deal with the Middle East. First, I'm not surprised. Secondly, I could care less about the Nobel Peace Prize because it has become trash over the years. When you look back and see other people who have gotten it, they have given the prize to terrorists who they have recognized, and one in particular was Yasser Arafat, who continued his brutality even after receiving the award. This year's award goes to an opposition leader in Venezuela, which I don't begrudge, but I'm sure that decision was done the way that it was so as to lessen the criticisms that the Nobel Committee would get for not granting it to President Trump. Nevertheless, I'm not going to lose any sleep over it, and I'm sure that President Trump's not going to lose any sleep over it. He doesn't sleep anyway. But President Trump is already an historic and historical figure and has surpassed any award recipient by the Nobel Committee. Now, this next item is one that should not surprise you, but I'm not telling you about this because you're interested in Virginia politics, but rather, once again, to point out the duplicity of the Democrats and how they will even protect the violence committed by their own membership. Abigail Spanberger, who is the Democrat running for governor in Virginia, refused to condemn and distance herself from the Attorney General candidate, the Democrat Attorney General candidate, Jay Jones, who was caught fantasizing about killing a fellow GOP member in the Virginia Assembly, as well as making his wife watch her children die. Spanberger was asked several times in a debate recently, and she deflected from answering the question. She was asked it 3 times and wouldn't answer it. Now, many of you don't pay much attention to politics, particularly in other states, as much as I do. But what happens in other states does impact you because they end up sending representatives and senators to Washington, D.C. that vote on national policy that you're going to have to pay for and suffer under. At any rate, this is just one more example of the point I've been trying to make and made in many podcasts and articles that I have written about, and that is the left is dangerous and a violent group of people, and most in the Democrat Party are of the same mindset. Okay, here's another one that further establishes that the Democrat left cares nothing about you. Senator Chuck Schumer of New York, who leads the Democrats in the Senate, said that with every day, now get this, this may be a repeat, but he said that with every day that the government is shut down, it just gets better for them. What he meant by that is that the more the people suffer, the more they will complain. All of his statements and the remarks of others have clearly established that he is doing this to save his own political neck. Can you believe that? Well, that's really a rhetorical question because Chuck Schumer, after being in Congress for over 40 years, has one foot in D.C. and the other foot in hell. Remember, Christ talked about hell more than he did heaven. And you need to think about your life and your omissions and your commissions. I have warned people, and that's what a Christian's supposed to do, is warn people. And I have warned people against Schumer before he was even elected to the Senate. I knew what he was up to, and I had known his previous background. He has never known the truth and has never spoken the truth. He has been one of the most corrupt and evil men in D.C., but I am again telling you about these things to alert you as to the nature of the Democrat left. There is nothing they say that you can trust or rely upon, and chaos is their friend, so that is why they have shut down the government. So what do you do about this, and what do you do about this information? Well, spread it to your family and friends. As the old saying goes, a lie will make it around the world before truth gets its pants on. So it's important for you to spread the truth as far and as often as you can. Well, here's one that I admit I get too much delight of and from, and that is the indictment of Letitia James, who is the Attorney General of New York, who tried to jail President Trump on a law that has never been used and on a case that she created. As Professor Alan Dershowitz said, she should not stay as Attorney General, and she should have never been Attorney General. And she ran for office on the campaign promise to get Trump regardless of any indictment or evidence of a crime. What makes this matter so rich is that there was no precedent for this type of an action against anyone, and particularly the one that she brought against President Trump. But there is one now, and the precedent that is existing now is one that she created when she sued Trump falsely. So her pet snake turned around and bit her. And I hope this black, racist, and corrupt individual is indicted, removed from office, and loses her license to practice law. Folks, to follow up on the Civil War topic that I was talking about earlier and what I believe you're unaware of and that we are in, and to drive that point home even further, let me show you with a few more examples of how alive and well evil is in the Democrat left. Well, that very unfunny and leftist propagandist, Jimmy Kimmel, says there is no Antifa. Now, see, this is the strategy of the left. They gaslight you. And now he's telling you in his supposedly comedy show that Antifa is not real. But it was just declared a domestic terrorist organization. Basically, folks, I would consider Kimmel an enemy combatant. In the face of burning cities and Antifa signs and militants all around, Kimmel spreads this lie. But remember, in this country, filled with people that have been dumbed down by public education, there is always an audience for this kind of stuff. Moreover, non-governmental organizations and foreign billionaires have been revealed as having funded the Antifa rioters, and they pay for the riots in this country. There has to be penalties for the profound lying of the Democrat left, and we are now seeing it more clearly than ever before. Get this, President Theodore Roosevelt said it the best. And it's when he said this: to anger a conservative, lie to him. To anger a liberal, tell him the truth. And oh, how true that is today. You will trigger a leftist quicker than anything by just showing up and telling them the truth. Sometimes you don't even have to say a word. All you have to do is look like a normal person, and that triggers them. Now, continuing on with this theme, you have the likes of Mayor Johnson of Chicago and the governor of Oregon, all denying that there's any problem in their cities, even though we have seen every night on the news the destruction, the fires, the carnage, and the murders that are taking place. There needs to be accountability and a quicker means of removing these insurrectionists and traitors in the elected offices that they hold. There's always an audience for the left. Now, this is profound, but the left has no shame, and it's beyond this country. It's all over. It's the same in every country. And it's just typical of them. But that self-professed Marxist president of the country of Colombia, get this, is taking credit for the peace treaty in the Middle East. Man, that is really profound, and that's bold. Again, these demons have become so profound and bold in the lies that they tell because they know they have an army of useful idiots that vote. And there's always an audience for them. Then we have the Democrat governor candidate in New Jersey who refuses to withdraw her support, like I just said previously, of the Attorney General candidate, Democrat candidate, who fantasized about the numerous occasions of killing Republicans. Then we have the Democrats who refuse to reopen the government, and they unanimously have the audacity to blame the Republicans when every Republican except one has voted to reopen the government. The media, for the most part, is totally controlled by the Hate America propagandist machine. But if that were not bad enough, many of the Obama-Biden judges keep blocking Trump in his use of the National Guard to protect citizens in the cities. Then we have Democrat leftist elected leaders in Congress preparing for the No Kings anti-Trump protest. The polls show wide support for Trump's deportations, yet the Democrat left is indifferent to the people's desires. And it is now clear from all the evidence that all the Democrats want wide open borders so as to flood the swing states with people that would vote for them and keep them in permanent power. Here's one side effect of another Democrat president and Democrats in charge of Congress. Think about the radical leftist judges who would be appointed to the bench, and folks, that would be the end of our country if the Democrats got in again. We already see the consequences as they fight Trump in his attempt to restore the country to protect it from the invasion on our southern border. Here's another example of just how crazed the world has become. In the peace deal over Gaza, Israel has had to release 250 murderers in a swap for 20 hostages. Folks, there is not enough words that I could speak to describe for you how utterly evil and dangerous these people are. There was one example where the Israelis gave medical care to a suicide bomber. This is a female suicide bomber whose package failed to explode, but she was still injured. She got medical treatment from the Israelis, but then she did it again. And after each time, she recovered and she got medical treatment by the Israelis. And when asked by reporters afterwards, when she was back in Gaza, as to whether she would do it again, she said, in a heartbeat. These are subhumans, folks. These are people who have been trained in hate in their schools from the age of 2 on. And the same thing's happening in this country. Folks, these people have been, like I said, trained. And we're being trained in our schools and our universities, and it has to stop. Now, continuing on with the nature of leftists and how dangerous they are, let's not forget the fires in California that killed 19 people and destroyed 9,400 homes. And it was said by a Biden supporter. Guess what? Your insurance rates went up. I don't care where you live in the country. Your insurance rates went up because of those fires. Here's another example of crazed leftists. It was a radical leftist that killed Charlie Kirk. And the left attempted to kill President Trump twice. And that list goes on and on and on, yet they have the audacity to basically tell you that the violence is coming from the right when you know it's not true. Again, another lie. But never forget that this dumbed-down country always has an audience to believe those lies. That's why you have to be out there constantly pushing the truth. For most of my life, I have fought against the liberal mindset, which I instinctively knew would lead to the chaos we have today because they are so psychotic. Even though at the young age of 16, I didn't know what the psychological term was for it, but I knew something was drastically amiss and wrong. And it was upset by the indifference of normal people to recognize how dangerous of a course that we were on. Now it's run its full course, and I don't believe at this stage there can be a peaceful solution. If you read and study enough and you look at the trajectory of things going on in so many different areas, I believe you would conclude the same. Now, here's a quick one for you. And look at this picture of Attorney Ty Cobb, who was a former White House counsel and what I call one of the disloyal establishment figures that plagued Trump in his first administration. Cobb recently said on CNN that the indictments against New York Attorney General Letitia James and FBI Director James Comey were brought merely because of President Trump's narcissism. Well, that's just another line of insults that Cobb has leveled at Trump since leaving the White House counsel back in Trump's first term. But here's my message to Mr. Cobb. I think you spend too much time in front of the mirror curling your mustache to be accusing the president or any other person for that matter of narcissism. If ever there was a sign of how too highly you think of yourself and of narcissism, it's on your own face. Okay, enough on Cobb. He really doesn't deserve that much attention. Last Friday on CNN's The Source, Queens Assemblyman and New York City mayoral candidate Zoran Mamdani called President Donald Trump's alleged weaponization of the Department of Justice authoritarianism, plain and simple. How rich is that for a communist to accuse the president, or anyone for that matter, of being an authoritarian? The only reason people get by with such absurdity is that there is no accountability. They are never called out by an independent media exposing the incongruity, and too many of us just let it slide and ignore it. That's where you have to be in the game. Because remember, there are others out there, the dummies that have no skin in the game but still have a right to vote, who will be influenced by the remarks of the likes of Mamdani and the ones that Mamdani made. You have to be the ones out there correcting that. You have to be the ones correcting the media and being a media substitute. Here's another thought for you to contemplate. Are good people doing nothing to fight evil because they have become desensitized to it? It's not enough to watch the news and say you are disgusted. And I hear that all the time. Even with some friends, they'll be sitting there watching the news and they say, oh, isn't that disgusting? But it's not enough to watch the news and say that's disgusting, and then that's it. And no, it's not enough just to vote right. That time is past. My question is, what have you done other than that? Now, as for Christians, how far off center are you? How far removed are you from the real truth of the Bible? Are you falsely assured? How far from the truth have you strayed? I can tell you this. You can confess with your lips, but if he is not in your heart, your actions speak otherwise, and you are falsely assured of any salvation. Likewise, if you think that just voting right is enough, you have strayed far from the truth and are disengaged, and your children will pay that price. If this is what you are doing to your children, do you really deserve being loved by them? Your duties as a parent and as a citizen extend far beyond your home. We are living in a generation of perversity. So I ask you, what are you doing about it? How you answer that may give you some indication as to what your eternity may look like. Remember Matthew 7:22, on that day many will say to me, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name and cast out demons in your name and do many mighty works in your name? And then will I declare them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you workers of lawlessness. That's a pretty scary verse, folks, and you need to be thinking about that a lot. Don't fool yourselves. Christ told us to occupy until he returns, and instead most are surrendering to the corruption of the wicked Democrat left and all those who do their bidding. To make things worse, we are electing the hedonists to rule us, and they are collapsing our country and the world. I tell you almost every podcast how devoted the Democrat left is at permanent dominance over you in this country. Do you do nothing because you are afraid that your righteous conduct will be triggered or would trigger the anger of the godless? Well, you shouldn't be afraid, but it will trigger them. That's no loss. After all, you are demanded by God not to be unequally yoked with the godless or those who do evil. My pastor gave a sermon on Sunday that told the story of when Billy Graham and President Ford played golf with some professional golfers. Later, when the reporter asked one of the professional golfers how the day went, he angrily responded toward Reverend Graham that he didn't like religion being shoved down his throat, and he stormed off. When the reporter turned to another player and asked him about that remark, the other player said, "There was never any talk of religion during the whole match." You see, it wasn't that Graham was preaching or even talking about religion, but rather it was Graham's righteous conduct that angered the other player. The godless, the Democrat left, the media, and the immoral hedonists of this world will hate you simply because you are alive and breathing. You are an indictment of the wicked. That is why to tolerate them is a sin in itself, because you are tolerating evil and are more fearful of men than God. Okay, now right after this podcast, this is something that you can do. This is an action that you can take and do your part, at least for this week. I want you to go online and get all the phone numbers of your federal and state elected representatives and senators. And then I want you to go online and I want you to buy a box of envelopes. And then I want you to pre-address all these to that federal representative, the federal senator, the state senator, the state representative. Pre-address 12 to each one of these. Okay, that's 48. And I know that might take a little time to do, but you can also enlist the help of your spouse or your kids or your secretary or whatever to help out, maybe a friend. And then go out and get a roll of stamps and pre-stamp these in pre-addressed envelopes. And now you're ready to start writing letters to these folks. And this is what you need to do. You've already made it easy for yourself. And you can just sit down and within 2 minutes, you can scroll out a quick letter. And once a month, you can write them. It doesn't need to be about any bill pending in your state, but it can be about a judge letting a murderer off early and not serving his time. It can be about a national issue or elected leaders of other states like the governor of California, Gavin Newsom, or Pritzker of Illinois, or the mayor of Chicago impeding ICE from doing its job. Tell them you want sanctuary cities banned or DEI taken out of the schools. Folks, there is so much to write about to them, or better yet, you can call their offices and talk to their staff. Remember, I was one of those who took those calls, read those letters, and they were reported to, in my case, a senator, a U.S. senator. And that's because they want to know what the people think and whether the voters agree with them or not. Okay, that's enough to digest for today. I've given you the important news and the truth as well as an action plan. So go forth and slay that evil dragon. And until next time, I'm Jack Richardson for Jack's Corner.